Commission of Inquiry into the failure to prosecute TRC cases has hit a significant legal bottleneck, I beg your pardon, for our presidents, Jacob Zuma and Thabo Mdluli, along with 4 former cabinet ministers, filed formal applications for the recusal of the Commission's chairperson, retired Justice Sisi Khampempe. Let's unpack this with Director of Khulumani Support Group, Dr. Marjorie Jobson. Dr. Marjorie, good to have you and thank you very much for your time. Is this a significant legal development? 2 former presidents, some ministers wanting the chair of the commission to recuse herself.
Thabo, it's a very sad development because this commission has already been very slow in getting started. We've been attending all the preparatory meetings, and what has been going on since it opened for the public to attend is legal arguments about many issues, not only this issue of the 2 presidents and other people bringing objections to Sisi Khampempe's leadership of the commission. I mean, we have incredible trust in Sisi Khampempe. She has done brilliant, independent, fair work. I mean, our most recent experience of her was with the Usindiso fire, resolving that. And I think she even managed to get reparation for all of those victims, 75 people who died in the fire. So it's very troubling that things are being delayed yet again. Originally, we heard that the plan was for this commission to end at the end of December last year. It has barely begun because of all these legal contestations. So we hope that it will finally get going because many people have put enormous hope in this commission, despite its very limited terms of reference, despite the fact that it doesn't deal with all the historic problems that we've brought to the Department of Justice over many years. I mean, the original report came out in 2003. So 22 years later, we still have no good resolution of all the unanswered questions. Yeah. I mean, I was reading today about Mbeki who chaired the Reparation and Reconciliation Committee of the TRC, saying we need a new way of finishing the business. She's sadly now passed on because her report was seen as a draft reparation policy that the government could adopt, and they did not adopt it. And instead, they sent it out to further legal examination, which ended up with drastic changes in the provisions that were recommended by Mbeki. So yes, it is really unfortunate that there's so much political opposition to letting this thing move forward, especially given the track record of Sisi Khampempe, whom we know as one of the fairest jurists we have in the country.
Let's talk a little bit about that track record, Dr. Jobson. I mean, what view do you have as the Khulumani Support Group of that particular track record and extensive background that also includes her serving on the TRC Amnesty Committee? It seems the 2 presidents feel that that could possibly create conflict of interest, including her serving as a former Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions.
I'm aware of that, but our experience of Justice Khampempe is that this is a person who can be infinitely trusted to do the best possible job that will remedy all these gaps that we sit and we live with still today, years and years after the TRC so-called finished its work, which it actually never did very well. I mean, when I hear about the proposals for the national dialogue to hold 12,000 local dialogues across the country, that's something that Rwanda did after the genocide in Rwanda. And 12,000, imagine if those 12,000 dialogues now took place across our country so that ordinary people will feel that they have a chance to possibly access justice that has evaded thousands of people in this country.
Yeah, and of course they are raising other issues. I mean, what is your interpretation of what they are saying here, that she has provided undisclosed legal counsel to the chief evidence leader of the commission, Advocate Semenya?
So I would not know exactly what they are referring to. I have attended those meetings where she had to answer and make decisions about the complaints that were being brought. I see the complaints have even included things like, we don't think we even have proper procedures for running commissions of inquiry. So, I mean, it feels like it's really going back to basics, and all the experience of these brilliant people like Sisi Khampempe are being brushed aside for political expediency and for a different solution than justice for victims of these crimes and for their families.
Right. I mean, yeah, the issue that they're saying that they would have seen her providing undisclosed legal advice and including guidance on issues to address and submissions to advance through the legal advocate Vas Soni. Would you view that as interfering with the integrity of the proceedings?
You see, I can't imagine that she made those kinds of mistakes. I cannot imagine. I have seen how this commission has been handling all the correspondence. We get copies of everything that comes to the commission as an interested party because we represent thousands of victims and survivors. And I've seen how she handles, the legal questions that are raised. These are basically legal questions that are delaying everything when there's such a huge need for victims to finally get some redress, some accountability, some justice. So I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the intricacies of the law in this regard, but I do think it's time that we actually had more humane solutions to what we have never dealt with. Since the transition, the issue of reparatory justice has never been dealt with properly in South Africa. Even though our TRC led the African continent in believing that there are different ways to solve this intractable conflict in countries. But we have totally failed to do a proper job of reparatory justice. And Khulumani itself has made multiple submissions to the Department of Justice, to the Minister of Justice, and basically have never had decent answers from them because we don't think they've really put their attention on it. Instead, they're putting their attention on protecting themselves from we don't know what. What is it that really worries them? What evidence are they scared will come to light? It's really time that bright spotlights were thrown on these issues because survivors and victims have lived with these secrets for far too long, and it's hurt our whole entire country.
According to Khulumani support group, I mean, why would these two former presidents, who I suppose in their tenure would have been some of those who would have had to be responsible for those reparations, are now revisiting this particular matter of a recusal through this present application? Why would they want to do this process? I mean, what is their motive?
Thabo, I do not know the answers. What I know is, we made presentations to the Secretary of the Cabinet. We've put in so many requests for proper dialogues to solve this issue. What happened early on is that Thabo Mbeki objected to the proposals that came out in 2003, which we took and we tested them, and we discovered they were actually perfectly tailored to the needs of victims and survivors. He then called in Judge Relamira, who was sadly a now deceased, superb judge from East Africa, and he asked Relamira to rewrite the proposals because he didn't agree with what Iraja Bedian, as the economist who wrote the original proposals, had done. And so we then applied for access when Relamira contacted Khulumani and said, I have submitted my suggestions to President Mbeki, which meant then we could apply to an access to information application to get the suggestions Relamira had made. We were even denied that because at the time, when President Mbeki said, we have too many issues first to solve with the IFP. That's more important than dealing with victims and survivors of this terrible conflict in the country. And that's been how things have constantly been delayed in dealing with what we call reparatory justice. There's now an African Union decade for reparatory justice for people of African descent. And I couldn't imagine a better opportunity for South Africa to make and to deliver on real reparatory justice, for which they have had countless submissions from well, certainly many from Khulumani, but from advisors that we have used from across the world.
Yeah.
And yet, despite there being enough money in the President's Fund, which is the reparation fund, we have constantly had to fight to protect that money from being dispersed for the wrong reasons. And actually, this is where the founding problem is. There has been no adoption of Hlengiwe Mkhize's draft reparation policy. That's a key issue because now there's nothing, no undergirding of any decisions made of reparation. It's purely ad hoc on an arbitrary basis because we get asked to comment repeatedly on draft resolutions to use some of the money, but there's no concrete inclusive plan. Originally, we asked for a reparation desk to be housed in the presidency. We would love to help them solve this problem. It's going to get even worse because of the failure to do reparation in Africa, now that the African Union is deeply focused on that.
Yeah.
And we work with the African Jurists and Judges Forum, and this is on their agenda. It's one of the top things on their agenda. And I just think that having done a wonderful job when we initiated the TRC, it would be just wonderful to use this opportunity of the African Union Declaration on Reparatory Justice to actually deliver, seeing that we also have the resources available in a fund that has not been pillaged. Yeah,
now, of course, the Kalata group has come out to say they oppose this application, in fact, calling for its dismissal. What is your position as the Khulumani support group on this application?
Thabo, I've been trying to get my head around it. I don't understand why they are. Well, I basically think all victims would reject this further delay in trying to stall any outcome from the current TRC inquiry. I mean, we would support that from Khulumani support group. So, I mean, one of the issues we've had is we were always key members of the debates and the discussions, and there was a decision to try and exclude us. And I think it's because we have such a big membership. We have records, a very big database of 130,000 records, and you'll know that the TRC only in all its operations reached only 17,000 victims compared to the 130,000 people that we have documented. And so even that's a very reasonable number. And when we hired a professor with all the financial expertise, to ask him how many, given what happened in this country, how many people would you expect to have qualified for reparatory justice? And all his mathematical reports were that the number we would expect would be about 120,000. So it almost perfectly matches what we've been doing in documenting all these, what happened to people. And I mean, I'm constantly, every day, being called by victims of these apartheid crimes and abuses who hope that finally this is going to open a door from which they've been excluded for years and years, and their children. I mean, I deal with people every single day on these issues,
right,
because we have failed the victims and survivors who basically were responsible for bringing down the apartheid regime.
Right. Dr. Marjorie Jobson, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Director of the Khulumani Support Group there on the latest developments on the TRC Judicial Commission of Inquiry that is now facing an application from 2 former presidents supported by some ministers for the recusal of retired Judge Justice Sisi Khampempe.